Several minutes of commercial-free football starts now.
Here are the Purple Mortgage Guys.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Purple Mortgage Guys. Here tonight with Goose. Tanner couldn't make it tonight. We'll have to get him on the next one again, Goose. But I just wanted to jump on, talk a little bit about the draft coming up and the 23rd pick specifically, but have to address the last video, probably our most watched or consumed video that we've had so far. And Goose, I did not know that you were going to be so pulverizing, we'll say, with your Stephon Diggs to Minnesota reunion take. And I know it was out there a ways, and I don't think any of us think that that's necessarily going to happen, but it was fun to get the comments. So do you stand by that take, or do you want to rescind that take?
Well, it's probably the most fun time of the year to just think about what ifs, hypotheticals, and kind of take a look at what they're doing. I think when I was younger and didn't quite understand the behind the scenes as much, it was hard to read between the lines and kind of see like, okay, what are they doing here? I think it's super unlikely at this point, probably even more so than when we recorded that video, that it would happen. I think at the time of recording, I believe that we had maybe a little bit more cap room freed up than we do. We're still pretty up against it, and there's a lot of ways to make more money. I'd still like to think that we try to tackle that wide receiver room a little bit more before the draft, but probably not super likely.
Yeah.
But well, I'd love to talk about some of these comments just because I brought up.
Regardless, we got a lot of feedback. So keep the questions and comments coming, everybody. If you got a comment tonight, you want a question answered or take on it, throw it in the comments. We'd love to have them. A couple of them here. We have Darwin said, love Diggs, but don't think we can afford him without sacrificing other areas of the team. But hey, it's fun to make a wish list. A lot of these types. Deborah, I dig the thought of Diggs back in Minnesota. People loved it. And then there was a lot of comments around Diggs and JJ being unstoppable, which feels quite fun and quite obvious. And then there was other ones where it's like Diggs would never coexist because he would not be able to be wide receiver too. He was a head case. He was a diva, whatever. So I don't know, Goose. I still think that would be unstoppable, but I don't know what the odds of something like that would be. But
that's one of the frequent comments that I saw that I kind of wanted to unpack a little bit. So one, I think Diggs is probably as polarizing of a player as our video was. When you have a moment like Minneapolis Miracle, you're going to be beloved by a ton of fans, and when you ask to be traded, you're going to be disliked by a lot of fans. The one thing with Diggs that I've never felt is I've never felt quite like an Odell Beckham or a Terrell Owens where like it's affecting the locker room and people are having to answer questions about it. If anything, I think he's ultra competitive. And when and maybe this is a fraction of TO, when they're losing games and he's not getting the targets, he knows that when he's targeted, they perform better. But I think his is more out of just like ultra competitor wanting to win, not so much of like the glitz and the glam, and he's tanking the locker room. I just think that when the games that he's gotten frustrated in, I think, why are they not throwing the ball to Diggs? So I don't think he's as much of a cancer as people make it seem. I don't love the like cryptic delete stuff on social media and do all this. There's some personality things there, but I think if I would rather have a player that wants to win so bad that they are maybe making a fit out of some things than some players that are more all about the stats or not care so much. They're there for a paycheck.
Definitely. Well, you know what? It's fun to dream, so we'll see what happens. I think we are officially both off the Lamar Jackson train, and we don't want that to happen. So as long as we stay clear of that, I think we're in good shape. We wanted to talk tonight, though, about locking or floating that number 23 pick. We wanted to get on record of what we think will happen, not necessarily what we want to happen. But are the Vikings going to stand firm at 23 and make a selection? Will they trade up? Will they trade back? What does Goose say on that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to float for sure. Which you have no idea what's going to happen. It's kind of like the mortgage market right now. It's pretty volatile, and one day we're flying high, and the next day we're maybe backtracking a little bit. It's going to be a really, I think, one of the more fun drafts to watch, because typically you have a pretty good idea what the team's going to do. This year I've seen pretty much anything floated out there. I've seen D-line, I've seen corner, I've seen wide receiver, I've seen quarterback, I've seen big trade ups, I've seen trade backs. I think this year is truly a mystery of like, what the heck is Kwesi going to do? What are we going to address first? Are we going to stick and pick? Are we going to try to accumulate more picks because we don't have many? Or are we going to go all in with current and future draft capital to try to get a quarterback of the future? And I think having all of those options at our disposal is going to make for a really exciting draft season and couple of nights of the draft. But if I had to bet right now, I would say we are not picking at 23.
All right. I would agree with you on that. What do you think, though? Does that mean there's a trade up or a trade back? You can't play both sides of it. So you got to
pick. I'll go trade back. Most of our positions of need, I've heard a lot of like, oh, this corner is not going to be available, this wide receiver is not going to be available. A lot of people are mocking 4 quarterbacks to go in the top 10, but there's only so many teams ahead, and there's 5 or 6 guys in each position group that people are like, well, they're not going to be there by 23. I think we're going to get to 23, and at a major position of need, there's going to be 2, 3, 4 guys that we like pretty equally. And so I think we probably go to the end of the first round, maybe even beginning of the second round, to accumulate some picks and try to get a couple of day one starters with 2 second, third round guys. So I'm going trade back.
Trade back. Okay. Everything wants me to say trade up. I feel like there's a lot of Will Levis steam, and I don't know if it's manufactured like your Stephon Diggs thing or if it's real. But every time I think I know, it's the exact opposite. So I'm going to say trade back as well. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to see maybe a few of the guys they were hoping to snag maybe in the mid-teens, if they were still available, maybe come off the board early. The QB run, I think, would be a big part of that. And then I think overall just having value to trade back a few spots, maybe even out of the first round, but maybe back into the mid to upper 20s. I could see that happen as well. So I'm also going to float. It's always good to lock it in, Goose, but we're going to both float on this one and see if we can buy an extra couple of picks and move down a little bit. So Bob, our man Bob here says 1 QB will fall. I don't know who we want that to be necessarily. I've been watching more of this Will Levis stuff, and I could get on board with Will out of Kentucky. Yeah. I don't know, Goose. What do you think on Will?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on what we have to give up. If I feel like we almost for sure would have to give up a future first, our current first, and then maybe something else. And if that's the case, the staff has to feel pretty certain that he's the guy, because with the holes that we have with another wide receiver and probably a corner, if not 2 corners, to invest that much into the quarterback position when technically it's filled for the roster in 2023. it's got to be a pretty certain thing. Now, if you land your guy and he's your quarterback for the next 15 years, then it's worth it. But the things we've done this year has shown that we wanted to win in 23. So I'd be shocked if we gave up a substantial amount. Now, if he starts falling into the 14, 15, 16, where you don't have to give up the world for him, I think it's possible. There's always a surprise. It could be Will Levis, and maybe even though Anthony Richardson is one of the most athletic freaks we've ever seen at quarterback, maybe some of his completion percentage numbers, something, holds him back. So we'll see. I've seen it anywhere where quarterbacks are now. I think Daniel Jeremiah just did a mock draft where Will Levis fell out of the first round altogether, and then somewhere all 4 of them are gone in the top 6 picks. So it's a wild year.
It's going to be a fun draft for sure. We're going to have to go do a live one that night because there's going to be a lot of stuff happening. So
for sure.
Do you think Skull Mafia's question? Do you think Hunter will be traded? And I don't know if we think that would be pre-draft or draft night potentially to move around there. Feel like he's going to be back, and that's a gut feeling. I don't know, Goose. What do you think on Daniil?
Yeah, it's a huge question mark. His camp has been quiet, which isn't, I guess, the norm for Daniil. I feel like normally when there's been something up with him, he's made it known. But he's also, of our edge rushers, he's got the most trade capital right now as far as something we could get, someone that we could get something for. I wouldn't be surprised if on draft night we wanted to make a big splash if he was one of those pieces. I think he's one of the few guys that we can really leverage. If I had to guess, I would say that we traded Neil.
You do think we do? Bob says he's going to hold out, move him. So we'll have to see. That'll be another interesting facet because you're right. Outside of JJ, he's probably got the most trade value of any player on the team, and it seems like something that will be inevitable at some point. Yeah, Bob's other comment was, okay, we need to draft a QB unless you want to extend Kirk. Absolutely. We cannot go into 2023 and not have some sort of semblance of a plan that hopefully will work out. We can't have a Kellen Mond on the roster and have it be a disaster and then be going through the Christian Ponder years again, something like that. So, yeah,
I think the really interesting thing with Bob's comment here is there's a lot of talk. A lot of people, a lot of experts think that next year's draft class is even better at quarterback, which they always say that. Then one of them has a bad season and falls out of the conversation. The tough thing is we don't have a ton of draft capital this year, and we've got a few pretty glaring holes, and it looks like we want to win next year. So you got to figure out a way to do it. Obviously, Nick Mullins isn't a franchise quarterback. I wouldn't be like in shambles if we had to rely on him for a few games to start up 2024 as we work with a rookie quarterback. But I do think they're going to be in a better position next year to leverage some draft capital and move up and get a guy.
Well, when Nick Mullins is throwing to JJ, Stephon Diggs, and Hawkinson, it's probably a pretty easy job, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You thought Brock Purdy had it.
Yeah. I'm curious. So Bob's given us some insight on who to pick and maybe some trade. Bob, if you're still watching, do you think they pick at 23 or do you think they move up or move back?
So you're asking Bob if he would lock or float.
Yes.
It's a good strategy. Throw it on Bob. Yeah. We'll see if we get any comments. In the meantime, if anybody else has a question or a comment, we'd love to have them, whether you're watching now or we'll address them on the next one. So, yeah, anything in closing, Goose? 23. If we pick at 23, is there a part of you that sees a QB fall at, like, they always say, well, our guy fell, right? We can't believe he was still there. Do you think that actually there's a scenario where, say, a guy like Levis falls to 23, we hold pat, we lock in, and we pick them at 23, and we don't have to give up any capital.
I mean, that's one of the best case scenarios.
For sure.
The downside is you're almost forced then to take that quarterback, and now you're waiting till later on in the draft to try to pick probably a starting corner. But I absolutely long-term future. Bob's going all in on the
He's
quarterback
pushing
position.
the chips to the middle.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain if a guy like Will Levis or Anthony Richardson's there at 23. I think what I really feel good about this year is how much homework they've done at the quarterback position. It sounds like they've looked into everyone and everything. And so if they draft a guy, I feel confident that they feel good about who they're taking. So that's good.
So much of this depends on the situation that these QBs are coming into too, right? Like if you're coming into a dumpster fire of a franchise with no weapons and no leadership, it's going to be harder for that same guy to, succeed there versus somewhere like the Vikings right now, who really have a lot of the pieces in place and I think in both of our opinions are under good leadership. So
for sure,
makes a huge difference. Be fun to see though. I think we get more excited talking about rookie QBs than we do a big ticket free agent or trade like Lamar Jackson, where you're going to handicap yourself elsewhere. So that is fun to look forward into the future.
One more thing to add to the comments.
What's that?
One more thing to add to the comments.
Yeah.
If we go quarterback, which I'm all for, I'd like to hear people's thoughts on, do you address a starting corner, wide receiver in free agency, hopefully with some older veterans that are maybe a 1-year rental? Or what's the plan there? Maybe trade some future draft capital to get back up into second, third round where you can still expect some of those guys to come in and play right away. I'm curious to see what people think there if we are going all in at quarterback in round 1.
Definitely. Well, we'd love to have some comments, so throw them in the comments. If you've got other Vikings fans that are friends, we'd love to have you share the show with them as well. So hit subscribe, let your friends know, throw in some comments. We'll be back again to address those. We're going to try to do a mock draft here once we get Tanner back on from his little vacation he's got going on here. And then we'll see where we land on some of the additional stuff. So Goose, it's been fun. If anybody out there, would like help with a home loan, hit us up. Otherwise, we'll be back with some more purple related content here in the coming days. Have a great night, everybody.